Live.
Hello, everybody.
Howdy, folks. Hey, Mary, Frank, Teresa, and Deborah. How you all doing?
Is that my sister, Teresa?
Teresa Walls in the flesh.
Uh, okay, so this is instead of Miss Jean's magic mirror, we have Miss Cynthia's magic cutter. I see Frank and Mary Joy and Teresa and who else?
Okay, you have to forgive her. This is the romper room lady with a little bit of Alzheimer's. There's Mary Joy, Frank, Teresa Walls, Jessica, Deborah
Hi,
Gabriel.
I see Jessica and Deborah, and I think that's good for now. Thank you so much for coming by, Teresa Walls. I really appreciate it. Okay, so we'll wait a few minutes. We'll see if a few more people show up. How is everybody this week?
We're doing good, Mary. It's been a busy week here. Poor Cynthia's been a friggin' little elf up all night polishing and cleaning things.
I want to try to get some stuff into. You can. I don't know if I'm going to build a store. You can just make some listings right in PayPal, and then post a link to your listing. So I've been trying to finish up some stuff.
You want me to go in on that? If you can bring
Sure.
it up about an inch, you'll be just fine. There you go.
Here's some earrings, some mandala earrings I've been making. Today we're going to play with some of Mary Joy's stuff. Hold on. Where did I put the little turtle? She sent me these neat turtles.
I'm sitting here going, I had the checklist.
Neat turtles. I love the shape of these. I really like that. I don't know if you can see right here that I guess that's a turtle shoulder. I like I like the turtle shoulder. So, but along with just the turtles, this is a small turtle, just silk screened on a larger pendant, and just ignore the fact that I scorched that. And then I used some of her other silk screens to silk screen on this pendant, and I did it over Mica Shift, and I just thought that I've done a lot of silk screening over Mica Shift, and I just think it looks cool. It looks super cool.
That's awesome, Mary. They just figured out the 0.4 edge on their cutters, so she's been busy redoing all the cutters.
Oh yeah, the 4 millimeter edge on the cut. Well, that makes a big difference. I've heard that from a lot of people that it makes a big difference. Huge difference. Okay, so let's see. I don't have a clock right here.
So we've been up and running for 5 minutes.
Okay, all right.
I had to
Well,
do math because, there's that kind of blobby period of time with the sign.
so I'm going to start with making not a small sort of stripy blend with the clay. And what I do is I use a variation of Cindy Leitz's teardrop blend. Instead of just picking some balls of clay up and shaping them into a teardrop and putting them next to one another, what I do is I use the Sculpey Cabochon maker to do that. So I'm looking to make sure I'm on screen here. So you can use either the triangle cabochon shape, or you can use the teardrop shape. I use the teardrop shape myself mostly because it's a little bit more clay. It's a tiny bit more clay. So, this is kind of self-explanatory, but I'll show it to you anyways. This is a knee-high stocking filled with cornstarch. I learned that in cake decorating. Cake making.
Hey,
I haven't had
if we could make a whole new science, we're teaching. Okay?
And so, I'm just going to go ahead, put that in there.
So Mary Joy says as soon as she's got the update, the 0.6 mil ones will be discontinued and the 4 mil runs will be there. And this makes her compatible with the big dogs.
So, the fact that the plastic cutters don't cut perfectly has never bothered me, but I know it's a big deal for a lot of people.
Teresa
So
says
I'm
she's
happy.
just popping in to say hi. She'll talk to you later.
Okay, thank you for coming by. I really appreciate it. I do. I miss my sister. I miss everybody, but I do really miss my big sister. You go take care of Bonnie the kitty.
Oh no, a cat. You can leave her with Ginger. She'll be good with the kitty.
I don't know what's it's an assertive cat.
This is Ginger, not Buddy.
Ginger is our dog, by the way, just so people know. All right, so there you go. You make yourself the cabochons.
Is that the same blob of clay you've had out for the last 2 weeks?
I've been wrapping it up in plastic and keeping it nice in between, but yes, it is. We, recycle, reuse. Make that. And somewhere I have a YouTube video where I did this. But this I'm doing a little bit differently because I want a little bit more clay in it. I'll put that together. And now I'm going to choose a second color. And I probably should have done the second color first because the second color is white. And if you notice, I'm not even... I haven't even conditioned it to get all the mica flakes going in the same direction or anything like that because they will as we're blending it. As we blend it, they'll all do what they're supposed to do. So we don't have to have it perfect. We just want pretty much the same amount of clay. In each little teardrop. I'm going to push this back here.
Jessica's telling Mary that they'll all be glad to buy more stuff at a discount.
Yeah, it really, it's funny. Some people I see they get very fussed about it. Oh, I shouldn't put it that way, but they, I suppose if you're pretty new to clay and you don't have all the tools to kind of clean up the edges, sanding is really hard for some people. People have, arthritis and stuff like that. But to me, that to be able to get all those cool shapes is the trade-off was that you had to do some cleanup. But I think that's great if you're doing the 4mm edge.
Hey Eva, how you doing? It's so nice to see you. Eva Erickson just dropped in to say hi.
Hi Eva. Hi. This is our YouTube tends to be our light night. So now we've got 2 teardrops. And I'm just going to cut them in half. And then I put them together to create a blend. So I've got one put together here.
So do you always put them together like to like? No, there you're all.
No, I was supposed to do this. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's. I was thinking that, but.
I was supposed to do that. Thank you for pointing that out. I don't want to confuse people.
Oh, I was confused, but that's easy.
So I've got one here. Let's just make sure I did it right. Dark light, dark light, dark light, dark light, dark light, dark light. Okay. Now this is not quite the width of my machine, but by the time I bring it down to the medium setting, it will be the width of my machine.
ShareMed says hello.
Hello.
Hiya, Cher. How you doing?
Good to see you. Thanks for coming by. And so basically I'm just rolling this to get it to the point where it will fit through my machine without stressing the rollers. Plus it gives me a chance to.
Yeah, you always talk nice to your rollers. I've never seen you yell at them. You know, you yell at the camera sometimes, but you're always pretty cool with the rollers.
Oh, we all need our rollers to stay nice. And I'm just gonna. Okay. Now what I'm doing down here, this is the edge I'm going to put through the machine. And so I'm straightening out that edge because blends act nicer if all the colors are touching the rollers when you put them through. All right, so we can straighten up here too, but it's the end that's going through the machine that you want to be. And just in case, I'm going to roll this way too. I just want to make sure everything sticks together.
To mute you when you roll this?
Yes, I am going to.
Okay, just let me know.
So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it through at the thickest setting. And then I'm not going to try to fold it or do anything else to it. I'm going to continue rolling it through to the medium setting. So I'm going to have Mish mute me right now.
You are muted. So we went on an adventure today while she's rolling that up. We had to go to Home Depot. I got to see the outside world. We got to wait in a parking lot for about 35 minutes. It was exciting. And then to top off the fun, we went to Ingles after that and did some grocery shopping. It was actually pretty good. The experience on the curbside pickup, I got to be honest with you, wasn't horrible. Something didn't come through on the network for them. So after about 25 minutes, they walked out and said, "Could you tell us what you ordered?" And then once we gave them the copy of the order sheet, it was pretty good. You know, and we've got all these down pat. You know, I just sit in the car. So essentially, I either call a friend of mine in Iowa or I call my brother in Montana and sit there and chat while Cynthia does the stealth shopping runs. And it was hot today. It was really hot today. Thank God the truck's got really good AC in it. It's an old, decrepit truck, but it'll freeze you out, so it's pretty good. Well, I was talking to somebody, I can't remember it, and yeah, it's the same thing for me. I think in the last 4 or 5 months, I've talked to 3 people on the outside world. Not that I talked to too many people before that. I can be, You are back, sweetie.
So I had somebody ask me why I do everything I do with these blends. Why, I'm already using like Jan's small triangles or Teresa's triangles or, the Sculpey Cabochon maker. And it has to do with scale. So if I were to pick up, any of these cutters, you're going to get, lots of variation. You're going to get to see blending through the whole piece of jewelry. If I wanted to do just a turtle, or this. When I make a blend where I don't split the little teardrop shapes in half. Hold on. This is what I get. So, hold on a second. I could cut a turtle down here, or like this, and get some variation in color, or I could go down here and get some variation in color, but there's a whole big piece of it where it's really all the same color. So that's why I go through all the trouble. Of course, we're still going to use this today. but that's why I do it, so that each piece that I cut, has some variation in it. It's just a scale thing. It's just a scale thing. All right.
That looks pretty, sweetie.
So there we go. There's our nice stripy blend. And I'm going to make a decision here.
Sweetie, I cannot hear you.
If I want it this way, or do I want it that way? And I think this way is more. What do you guys think?
There we go. You're back. I think your mic is loose, sweetie.
Oh.
Because you just went quiet there for about 30 seconds.
Okay, what was I saying? Hold on a second. I can't find the end of my mic.
I had just said that looks really pretty, and then you went mouthy.
Okay.
Mouthy.
So did they hear me say why I go through all the trouble of splitting the triangles in half?
I think so.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
I can't hear you.
Really? So is your headset unplugged? I am going out.
I can hear you now. Okay. Well, anyways, I hope people heard what I said about, why I go through all the trouble of cutting triangles in half and making these stripy blends. It's just so I can capture, a whole lot of blending, a whole lot of variation in color in one piece. So.
Good. Everybody heard that. So it was just your mom's communication.
Okay. So, and then the other thing I was looking at is, which way do I want, these blends to go? That looks kind of neat. It wouldn't be. It's not so dramatic in the turtle, and it's pretty good. But so I think that what I want is for my blend to face this way, because I think that's pretty cool.
Patricia Brendan says hello, by the way. She came in while we were going back and forth.
Oh, hello, Patricia. Is it Bearden? Patricia Bearden?
I believe so. I don't know. My job is to guys' names.
Because she started, the reason why I'm asking is because I know that Patricia started a YouTube channel, and if she wants, I don't think she can put a link in the chat, huh? They don't let her do that.
I do not know that, Sam. But she can try, and I'll see if I see it, and if not, if you can send it to me on this, somebody can send it to me, I can post it.
So what I used to usually when you do Mica Shift, you can put a piece of clay through the machine with a texture sheet or roll a texture sheet over it. But I decided to be really brave and try these core rollers. So I do this all the time with you guys. I do something I think might not work. So you're going to have to bear with me a little bit.
That's the fun part of this. If this was 100% rehearsed, it'd be boring.
So I'm going to cut some of this off because we don't necessarily have the time to watch me. Now, if you watch one of my videos, I would trim this all up nicely. So this is on the medium setting. I wouldn't go thinner than that because we're going to shave off the raised part of the design, and so you want to give the roller enough clay to create a deep texture. And so with these rollers, what I do is I just really, really, really pounce in some cornstarch.
That's a great word, pounce.
Pounce. It is.
Just in amongst itself, it kind of like denotes joy, action, and just this evil little grin, right?
There's a clay artist named Desiree McQuarrie, and when I told her that this was a cornstarch pounce, we joked about it all night long. She was like, that sounds like an Amish dance. And then I'm just gonna use a brush to make sure it really gets in all those areas. And I've been having a little bit of trouble with this one. Well, we have another one ready. Okay, so I've got cornstarch everywhere.
You should be able to post it now, Patricia. Let me know. I didn't go through. I just temporarily made you a moderator.
Yeah, because we.
It's funny, but for some reason I'm going back to my youth, and my brain has been just in He-Man land. I have been, you have the power of Grayskull. Between that and what was the cat cartoon with Lionel?
I don't know.
I think I'm losing it.
Okay, so I just patted this down to get it to stick to this tile, and I also rolled it in all directions. So now I'm rolling over it pretty hard. Pretty hard.
There you go, Patricia. That went through. And now I have taken the power away. See? See where I get my kick, sweetie?
I do see where you get your kick. More than anybody.
Thundercats. That's it, Mary Joy. Thundercats. I was the biggest fan of Thundercats when I was a kid. I'm really dating myself right now.
Thunder,
Top Cat was awesome too.
Okay, so that's a beautiful texture. I don't think I gave you the links to these core rollers. KOR, core rollers. They're some really beautiful patterns and textures.
I will look them up in 30 seconds. I got to do a little.
Put something up there. Okay, so that's a beautiful texture. But if we tried to silkscreen over that, we'd have some problems. We would have some problems.
You have some
because
problems?
silk screens don't like bumpy surfaces, right? Paint would leak underneath and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn it into Mica Shift. So you want to use a flexible blade, all right? And you don't want to hold the blade way out here. You want to hold the blade toward the middle, right? And I am bending the blade, and this part down here is going to go straight against the clay. Straight against the clay. So I don't know. Is that as close as we can go
Here, I can go closer if you want.
without it getting too stretched?
How's that?
All right. All right. And let me move
I can slide
this.
it down. You didn't have to. No, you went the wrong way.
All right. Calm down. It's all right.
There you go. You're centered now. Is it
Okay.
KOR Tools?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to put
And
a
so-
link in chat for their main page.
Now, when I, I'm going to actually trim this because I don't want to spend time.
I knew you couldn't resist making it square.
Well, I don't want to spend a lot of time scraping off clay that I'm not going to use, right? Now, when I do this, especially if I haven't done it in a while, I'll always start at the edges. That's because if you mess it up, you probably weren't going to use the edges anyways. But I've got it so that it's stuck down onto the tile pretty well. Now, I know a lot of people will take it and put it on a jar so it's standing up. And they find that easier, but I don't. But if you do, that's fine. If you want to put it up on a jar or so that it's standing up and you're just sort of scraping down. I found that I oftentimes took too much off if I did that. So basically, I'm just taking off the raised part of the design. And if you bend your blade the way that I showed you, then even if you mess up, you're only going to mess up a small area. If you have your blade like this and you try to scrape down and you go too deep, you're going to mess up a huge area. But if you keep it controlled, to this small area.
I got to figure out a block plane for clay. That would be a cool tool.
I've tried to do this like with a vegetable peeler and didn't have like a lot of luck.
Well, I think you've got a thing there is you're controlling the blade angle there, but it's all about being able to set the right height for the blade angle and then letting it glide, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so you've got it bent up like this and you want to make sure that you're keeping it flat. You don't want to start scooping, or digging in. And it's the old adage, it's easy to go, back in and take more off. It is not easy
To put it back. Yeah.
to put it back, In fact, with this particular method, it's impossible. Now, I do keep my blade pretty clean because that helps.
And are you cleaning that with just a wipe or with alcohol? How are you cleaning that?
I'm just cleaning it with a paper towel.
Okay.
And you can tell when you need to clean it because you start getting a lot of drag. But see, the blade gets dirty pretty quickly, and then you start getting that drag. So it's not, the most exciting process to watch.
It's kind of like watching a podiatrist.
It is. Now, are there people here who've had a lot of problems with Mica Shift, or do people feel like they've got a pretty good handle on Mica Shift? Some people said there's no way I can do that. There's absolutely no way I can do. I'm not even going to try.
Okay, so the Mica Shift, I'm going to ask some questions here because I've been watching the patterns and the designs you get out of this. So, does the shift occur because of the pressure of the wavy things?
All right. So clay that has, a lot of mica in it. So if you look at it like before it's been through the machine a lot, right? That's not a wrinkle in the clay. That is where mica particles aren't all laying in the same direction, flat in the same direction. So you put it through the machine a lot so that you don't have those streaks.
So
As part of the
that normalizes the pattern. Deborah Farmer just showed up and says hello, friends.
hello, Deborah.
Jessica says, yeah, she's had problems with Mica Shift. It's never come out right.
So do you think you go too deep, Jessica? First of all, I want to make sure I said hello to Deborah Farmer. So anyway, so then when you press the tool into the clay, that takes the mica particles out of line again. And then over here there's still a pattern, but here, I'm sorry, over here there's still texture, but here I've actually scraped almost all the texture off, but you can still see the pattern.
Okay, so it's actually almost the opposite. By pressing down, it moves those mica particles kind of into so that they're not as visible at that point. Then when you shave them off, you get to that layer where they're visible.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, that's it.
It's okay to say I'm full of balahooey, because I don't know.
And you want to get rid of these as soon as you can because they get mushed down.
Jessica says she thinks she goes too deep.
Yeah. So, and that's the other thing too, like when I first started to do this, I had to train myself, like, okay, if you're going too deep, stop. just stop. Maybe that one little area will be messed up, but then you'll have all this other area.
What is the line we use here? It's time to stop, otherwise there lies madness.
Yeah, I have a tendency to go one step too far.
I'll have it. Yeah. Deborah Farmer says she really likes that pattern.
It's beautiful. It's a core texture roller. It is beautiful. They have some beautiful patterns.
And Eve is making me hungry. They're talking about breakfast.
Ooh. I should have planned a breakfast for supper tonight.
We should have picked up some sprouts and stuff, and we could have done egg foo young take 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I made some pretty good egg foo young the other night. And so I know this isn't the most exciting thing on earth, but, sometimes just getting a chance to watch somebody do something might be the thing that helps you get it. I'm going to wipe my blade off. And
sure, Mad's saying we are mad in a good way. I do have to admit, I like the clay people I've met so far. They get along well with a lot of the programmers I've spent my life with.
Oh, there's a lot of programmer players.
That might be too much for me. I might get scared.
So if this is deathly boring, tell me, and I'll move on.
I'm not bored yet.
Well, you get bored easy, so.
No, you know me. I'd go off on a whole tangent if we were boring. It's kind of like a really slow motion NASCAR race because I'm watching you cut all of this, and there's that part of you that's like, is she going to slice her fingers? And, you know, just like when you watch a NASCAR race, there's always that part of you going, are we going to see a wreck?
Complete and utter mess. Come watch us bleed live.
Exactly. Watch
So now
Panic run in with a bunch of napkins.
I am going a little bit slower than I usually go with this, and that's because I'm at kind of an odd angle. I would usually have this like closer to my body, but then you guys couldn't see it if I did that. Now, some people go much quicker than me. I've seen this, and I'll show you. Hopefully I won't mess it up. But some people do, you know, short, quick little bits like this.
You know, again, it strikes me there's so many Zen movements in clay.
What's that?
There's so many Zen movements in clay.
Yeah.
You know, it's that slow, deliberate, purposeful pace that focuses your concentration.
Yeah. So see, that's kind of a more. And the thing that I don't like about going quick like that is it sometimes leaves more like little crumbs all over the clay, and you know, most of the time you can get those crumbs out, but sometimes. Now, there's a lot of people that they don't try to get completely flat, and they put it back through the machine to do that last bit of flattening.
It strikes me that you have to be real careful there.
Yeah, you would. You do. You do have to be real careful. I know that I don't always get the edges perfect, but you know, again, like I said, you're usually not using the edges, so I don't get too worried about it. Now you can see why I didn't do the whole sheet though.
Yeah, this turns into a labor of love.
I do find it very relaxing. You know, when I'm not worried about completely ruining a piece of clay live.
Yeah, your crashes have never been that bad alive. You do fine, sweetie. It's reality TV. Sometimes the baby just cries, right?
Yeah, sometimes. Let's see, there's what we got right there. We got a little, let me see if I can shave it off. We got a little clay crumb. That's, you know, it's never at the edge. It's always right in the middle of your pretty pattern.
Well, it's just like a zit. It's never somewhere you can't see. That's true, Deborah. Deborah's saying it's all a labor of love for us, otherwise they wouldn't do it. Deborah Farmer's giving you big hugs.
You know, I planned this, you know, because I just really think that the, you know, I've been doing a lot of silk screening over Mica Shift, and I just think it's so pretty. But then I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, couldn't you plan couldn't you plan something with more guaranteed success? I mean, did you really have to? But I've done this enough. And then I'm always paranoid that I'm boring people.
I can tell people have been with you a long time, and I haven't been. One thing I haven't been is bored.
So I'm just gonna sort of, I can tell right there it needs a little bit more. So you can see, I mean, I really am just scraping the pattern off. You know, I'm not going into the clay. I'm not going beyond the pattern. Of course, that's the trick. That is the trick with this. And you get to the point where you can kind of see.
Deborah Gabriel saying, "Oh no, we have to do the hard stuff." And Mary Joy saying, "I like to do on marble. She likes to do marbling too."
Yeah. Also, silk screening looks really great over what I call shame canes. You know, if you got some canes that didn't come out great, you can either put a translucent lace cane over them, or you can silk screen over them.
So Eve Erickson says you could never be boring, says Cynthia. And really, she can't. Even I could listen to her read the groceries, and I do a lot.
I hope I haven't got my whole head under the. All right, so I think. Let me just feel around here a little bit. It's like Braille or something. Like I said, we're probably not going to use. Yeah, I always, you know, when I first started, I would start at the very edge like this, and then if I messed it up, it just wouldn't matter.
Frank likes the term shame cane, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's a great one, isn't it? All right, so.
You know, you guys will have to describe to me the difference between that and the walk of shame. I've never quite.
Shame cane is just a cane that didn't come out good. You know, like remember when I first started caning, I over-reduced every
Yeah, but
cane.
we got some fabulous beads out of those.
Yeah, we did. We figured it out. All right, so I'll put it here, and let me put these two rollers away so I don't lose them and then don't have them tomorrow. Now, like I said, some people will go ahead and put it, you know, through the machine at this point. I usually don't do that. I'm gonna take my acrylic roller, and I'm very gently rolling, and I'm gonna roll in all directions. I'm gonna start in the middle and roll out. And God damn it! Excuse my language. Excuse my language.
She's been hanging out with me far too long. Okay. She got that from me. When I first met her, that would never have issued out.
Again, I'm going to go back to the middle and then come toward myself. From the middle to my right, from the middle to my left. And then I'm going to do the four corners.
Poor Jessica's going, why do people keep distracting me? I'm watching live.
I'm sorry you get.
It's an Illuminati plot. They're trying to keep you from the secrets of the clay universe.
Okay. I'm feeling that there's just a few little lumpy bumpy areas. So I'm going to put another sheet over that. And I'm going to burnish. This is a furniture slide. It's made to something. Okay, that's just something in the paper. It's made for you. It's made for you to put. It's a put under furniture so you can move it around. I know that some people use you know, the thing that tamps down the espresso, and some people actually.
Yeah, I have one of those. Those a little aluminum tamper thing you do.
Yeah, though I tried with that, but ours I guess wasn't like the expensive version. I'm flipping it over. to, so that gets the front of the veneer really flat. You know, if there's a big dip in the clay, then doing this will never get rid of that, right? You have to flip it over and put the pressure this way. And that will flatten out the front much better. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to release the paper. Paper from the clay, it's a whole lot easier to peel paper from clay than it is to peel clay from paper, if that makes any sense. Put it back on there pretty loosely. Okay, and now we have, it's a sheet with a pattern in it, you know, that'll really show up. But it's, you know, it's flat, so we can put our silk screens on it.
So Eve Erickson saying, nobody bothering me. They've all gone to bed.
Oh, good.
And Mary Joy says you can use, I've never heard of those, Mary Joy. You can use the metal soap, the ones for removing garlic smell. I don't know.
Oh,
what
yeah.
those are.
Yeah, a lot of people use those. It's this like, it's like I don't know if it's aluminum. I think it might be aluminum. But what it does is it removes that garlic and onion smell.
But I
All right,
like
let me
garlic
get-
and onions.
All right, I'm gonna put. I'm gonna start with this one. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start with this one. So when I cut the turtles, you really couldn't. You can kind of see the mica shift behind the turtles. So that's why I went to sort of this mode. I thought that looks kind of cool. But here's what we'll do. Let me make sure I have enough for one of these. Cut that in half. And now I probably don't have enough for a big turtle, right? Do I? I do, but I have to do it this way. I have to do it this way. Because you could just use one of the sheets that you haven't put a pattern in yet for the turtles. Because the mica shift doesn't show, quite as, it's just not as boom right there in your face. When I put liquid, I got to clean up the edges of this. And when I put liquid clay or resin or something like that on it, it will look different than a turtle that was just done on, like plain clay or plain mica clay or something like that. So now silk screens have a shiny side and a dull side, and you want to put the shiny side down, and I'm going to have to get a little fancy with this guy.
Now, is that moist, or are you just pressing it dry on there?
I am pressing it dry on there. It does have, kind of a sticky side.
Okay.
Kind.
It looked moist to me, so I wanted to make sure you didn't need to, put some magic potion on it.
Kind of a sticky side. And I've shown people before, and I'll show it again tonight, just in case there's somebody new. You can put a line of paint here and then squeegee over it. But I very often will just use a stencil brush. Excuse me one moment. I will just use a stencil brush. And that gives me a lot of control. So I just have some white craft paint. The other thing about using a stencil brush is you can use a thinner paint. You know, if you have a pretty color, you know, silk screens do well with a sort of a medium body paint. Make sure he's stuck down good. I'm going to get some paper towels ready. And I can't see if I'm in the right place because...
Hold on.
Okay.
Let me jiggle you. Okay, you're cool. Now
Okay.
I'll go back the other direction. There you go.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to dip the stencil brush into some paint. Now I have a little dish of warm soapy water ready. It's at the ready. And I'm wiping most of the paint off. And then I'm using a twisting motion. I'm not pouncing. I'm using a twisting motion. To just get that paint in there. This takes longer, but oftentimes I'm trying to like only silk screen like one part of a silk screen or something like that. So I came up with doing it like this. Some people just take a regular brush and brush it on. You know, say you wanted to do this multicolored or something like that. This is a thing that I thought everybody knew about, but turns out they didn't. So again, I'm wiping most of that paint off. And the other thing you can do is if you use this stencil method is you can get like a distressed look. You can purposely not. And I'm lifting up just the corners here just to see how it did. Okay, and now I'm going to put the silk screen immediately into some warm soapy water that I have off camera here. Warm soapy water. Put it right in there. Now I'm going to put this guy aside and let him dry.
So Jessica says she needs a better stencil brush. Did we have any links for that, sweetie?
No, I think I just use plaid stencil brushes. I think I just use plaid.
Is that a well-known doohickey?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it should be.
You know, because I've got this green and red checkered pattern on a brush in my mind. So I'm like, I don't know why the pattern makes a difference, but hey, I'm not going to argue.
Now, I don't know if Jessica is still with us. This is a piece of my hair. You don't need that. You don't need that to do this craft. I don't know if Jessica is still in chat. These are, this is a purple silk screen that she sent me to sort of test out. I have washed this in very, very hot water. These purple silk screens are really, really, really sticky on the back, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Especially if you wanted to silk screen on clay that was already baked or silk screen on something other than clay. These aren't a bad thing at all. But if you're going to use the purple on clay itself, then my suggestion is that you wash it in very, very hot water. And let me just make sure. I'm just double checking. Okay. Now, on the ones I made, I didn't include this little border up here. I actually wish I had put my smaller stencil brush someplace, but it's a little crooked too. But if you're going to use them on raw clay, then my suggestion is, you know, wash them in very, very hot water, and that will That will take a good deal of the sticky off.
So Sweetie Mary Joy says hot water removes the stick.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know, like I said, if she does start having a lot of these purple ones, you know, I think that the amount of sticky on them would be fantastic for clay that's already baked, or you know, wood, or, you know, something else that you have that you might want to silk screen.
And Jessica knows who Plaid is. So she
Okay.
must watch Twitch because we know Plaid the streamer on Twitch.
That might have been a little too much paint there. Now, see, I should have stopped and gotten my smaller brush because I'm going to have a hard time not catching this border up here.
The Mary Joy also says they are awesome for etching glass.
Oh, yeah. Somebody on the Pandora team did that. She did elephants on a wee jar. It was really cool. Back in the day. So see, if you used a squeegee, you know, it would be hard not to catch this stuff up here. Do, 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 do. Let me lift that, see how it did. Okay. See, it really, even though I washed it. Okay, we need to. All right, I'm going to have to just take a chance here, and then I'll show you a trick to remove any stuff you don't want.
Wow, you got so little on there. I thought you had a big smudgy on there.
You thought I had a big schmudgy?
Yeah. You would never guess I spent 90% of my life as an engineer with the words I use. So you really got to see the look on a marketing guy's face when you say something like smudgy to them.
So there, I'm just going to take my time. All right, there we go. Put that. Now, I'm going to put my brush in the water too.
So poor Cynthia's had to deal with me doing interviews. I've been looking for one more contract before I retire. And she's got to hear me talk to these headhunters. It's an interesting conversation. I hate talking about myself. I really do.
So I'm going to put a little bit of alcohol. Got a little bit of alcohol in a little cup here. And all over my desk. Why not?
So
Janet
Janet Smith is asking, could you put a piece of painter's tape over the edge?
I was,
over
yeah,
the board
I actually,
to make it easier?
you can use the painter's tape. You can. I baby my silk screens. You know, I don't like to do things like that to my silk screens if I don't have to. If I had used a smaller brush, it would have worked out a little bit better. But it's okay. So I'm just, this is, you do have a link to these little eyeliner brushes.
Yes, I do.
And I'm just going to remove some little bits of paint that went astray, that went awry. Use a clean one.
I'm looking all over the place for those eyeliner. Is that the Quick Art Stylist? No, that's not the flat.
No,
I got it. I got
I
it.
was going to say it's right around there though. Oh, that's a little too much. We'll let that evaporate. All right. And then if a few places don't really, transfer the way you want, there's like little holidays or something like that. I use a teeny tiny brush. But this is, and I want to make it clear, this is because of the technique I used, not the silk screens. The silk screens are great. And you can fill in any places. Crisp up that line a little bit. So see, almost anything can be fixed. And a lot of that comes from, again, we were selling a lot. So, when you're selling a lot, you can't just say, oh, well, that didn't work out and get rid of it. You need to fix it.
See, it also comes from practice because I got to be honest with you. Even looking at this close up on the camera, my eye wouldn't catch what you're catching.
That is a. So now we'll put this one aside because this guy should be dry by now. And let's take a look. Even if the paint dries a little bit, these things aren't really fully dry for a day or two. It's just one spot right here.
She does share. She does make it look easy. But one of the things I give her is she's really good at explaining so it becomes easy and you get it. So that's that's what struck me all these years. I haven't been able to convince her to do any programming. I'm not as good at teaching programming as she is with clay.
I'm going to pull this toward myself just for a minute. So it's going to be kind of off screen just for a minute. Only because I really want to center the cutter well over the silk screen. Did it stay centered? Yeah, I got to stand up
that's
and look at this.
I got you centered. You're cool.
No, I want to make sure the cutter. Ooh, I just hit the camera with my head. I'm sorry. I want to make sure the cutter stayed centered. Normally, what I would do with this is I would get it on the tile that I'm going to bake it on because this is going to be thin. And once I cut it, I don't want to have to keep picking it up. Let's move that. That's a disaster waiting to happen.
We're getting the people think we're adorable, sweetie.
We are. I don't know. It's hard to be. It's cool actually to be 57 and have people telling you you're adorable. Here it is. I'm just gonna roll over it. Now, if this wasn't so thin, I'll show you something that we used to do in cake making. I don't want to do it with a pretty piece of clay. We used to lay fondant over this. So this is the part of the cutter that cuts, right? This is the top of the cutter. This is the bottom of the cutter. We would lay fondant over the cutter and then roll over it in order to get a clean net.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to pull that up, and then we're going to, can we remove it, or do we need to? We can remove it.
You did a good job there, sweetie. There's a couple smudgies.
Okay, and then, isn't that pretty though? I really like this detail up here. Now, I've talked about these before. These are quick art styluses. Make sure this is stuck down here pretty good. And I'm going to use that to trim some of this stuff away. And I'm going to be particularly careful in here because that's very difficult to clean up once it's baked. It's a teeny, teeny, tiny area.
God, your hands are smooth that way. Me, I'm bouncing all over the friggin' place.
Well, these tools, you know, you can put your finger here, and they're super, super, super thin. So they work really great. If you try to do this with a blade, it's hard to keep the blade straight up and down. You either tilt this way and undercut it, or you tilt that way and you know, don't cut enough off, right? And I've made sure that, you know, you'll notice as we go along here, I'm kind of patting the clay down to make sure it's adhered to the tile.
Sherman's asking if the links will be there later. Can we put these links on the Thinkific page, sweetie?
We can put the links on the Thinkific page, and also we can add it to the about on the YouTube.
Yeah,
now I'm not so worried.
I'm afraid to go edit these YouTube videos because once I start, I've got so many to do.
I'm not so worried about right here because I can come back and sand that pretty easily, and I don't mind sanding, but other people do. But these tools are kind of cool.
So I think the honest answer here, Med, is if tomorrow I edit the videos and if I remember, then yes, the links will be available.
But we will try to get them up on our Thinkific school too, so that there's some place for them permanently to be. Yeah. We'll do like a favorite.
One of the things we have to do is post the lives on the school as well. I have a whole bunch of that kind of bookkeeping to do.
He doesn't want to.
I don't want to do it. I mean, picture me in 6-year-old going, "I don't want to do it." That's pretty much it.
So I don't necessarily get all this excess clay off of here, but it's no longer attached to the piece, right? So I'll just scrape it off the tile after baking.
Because one of the things I'm going to go through all of the live videos and do is to cut out the 5 minutes at the beginning and put a new leader screen in.
I know, because sometimes we've got people going, "Hi, I'm here," and I'm like, "Oh, we're not here anymore."
We were there 2 weeks ago.
And I never know what to do because I don't want to embarrass people. And then, of course, you know, you can use these clay. There's a lot of names for these. Color shapers, clay smoothers, wipeout tools. People have all kinds of names for these. But you know, the more you do before you put it, this is another thing that I'm always afraid to show people because I think I'm going to bore them. But you know, the more you do before it goes into the oven, the less you have to do when it comes out of the oven. And you know, none of this stuff is going to get better looking in the oven, right? If you don't like how it looks now, you're not going to like it when it comes out. So you just want to keep that. Nothing magic happens.
Really?
Now, another thing you can do with a piece like this that's, you know, got a pretty detailed edge, got a pretty detailed outline, is you can take one of those teeny tiny brushes I just showed you. And you can dip that in alcohol, and you can do a lot of smoothing and a lot of cleaning up of your edges. And so this still isn't perfect, but it's pretty good. So there. So I would get this cured, and then after it was cured, I'll show you on the other pendant, I'd get a back put on it, and you know, maybe a bail. And then I would probably use liquid clay on it.
So I'm just going to give you a time check, sweetie. We've been running for an hour and 19 minutes.
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know if I'm going to get to finish everything today, but.
Well, there's always tomorrow's stream.
So with this one, I just kind of messed around with this. This cutter's from Create Along. And I just wanted more of I wanted a few pendants with more of the Mica Shift showing. And, you know, the Mica Shift doesn't necessarily show up that great prior to baking. But, you know, after baking, and then if you put resin or liquid clay on there, it really pops. It really, really pops. Woohoo!
That came out clean, sweetie.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know what? It's also not. It's not as detailed.
Well, yeah, it's not as complex.
So this one we might be able to get away with just.
Hey, sweetie, at the end of the day, I wanted to, if you can, show some of the pieces that you're working on for when we do whatever we decide to do, auction, raffle, whatever it is.
I don't have them handy, but I'll have them handy for tomorrow. How's that?
Okay, that sounds good. Excuse me.
I think I might have one bead where I can.
Well, if you got something handy, throw it up because it'd be nice to show folks.
Okay. And then, you know, I decided that I wanted to make these fairly simple, you know, just with the cord. I just wanted to use a cord through them. And so what I used for that is, this is, you know, if you go onto Amazon and you type in leather punches, you get a whole box full of these little teeny tiny cutters that are meant to, they're very sharp, They're meant to cut shapes out of leather. And I'm sorry, I just have to pull it toward myself just so I can get it centered and straight. So there you go. So again, I would bake that, get that all nice and baked up. And then I put a back on them. And I'm sorry we're running out of time. But basically all you do to get a back on them is I have some liquid clay on just a piece of kitchen sponge. It's nothing fancy. It's just a piece of kitchen sponge.
ShareMed says great cutters, by the way. That was a cool set. When that arrived, it's like zillions of different shapes of cutters.
Yeah. So I've got some liquid clay on the back. I'll put that right down on some raw clay. And again, I'm going to use one of my...
So the top clay is baked and the bottom
Yes.
is raw. Okay, cool.
And the bottom is raw. Oh, that's how, that's almost how I almost always do it.
Oh, I figured. I didn't know. So I was just
Yeah.
asking.
And I should have done that on a piece of paper. That's okay. We'll put it back. We're going to have to trim it anyways. And then I'm just going to use a texture sponge. I have to get a link to Leela Bidler's store because she sells these. I'm sorry, you can tell I was hanging out with the doggy today because I got my hair. Let's get one that doesn't have hair all over it.
See, if you buy jewelry from us, not only do you get the love we put in it, but you get a little piece of ginger, the St. Bernard.
And so what I am doing is I start in the center and I press outward. And unfortunately, this texture sponge had something on it because I'm rushing. I'll have to take that out with some alcohol. And I'm going to scrape off the edges there.
So is that flush or do you bevel it at that point?
I'm beveling it a little bit, especially with this one because I don't know if I maybe need to sand the edge just a little bit. So I'm going to bevel it a little bit.
So Jessica's saying Chinese created, question mark? And no, we do not have a hairless Chihuahua. I have a thing with dogs.
Chinese created.
Little dogs are kind of like food for bigger dogs.
Oh, don't say things like that. Everybody will leave the channel in droves.
Not for real, but no, all my life, a small dog to me is 100 pounds.
And I'm going to trim out this too as well. Just make it nice and neat looking. Now, I don't know, did everybody here see me put liquid clay on?
I did.
Last week. I put liquid. I showed people how I put liquid clay on to make things shiny. Let me do it quickly. I'm sorry I'm rushing so much here, you guys. So basically what I do is I put a pretty thick layer of liquid clay
Sorry, Frank. He says, no, I love my little dog.
I had a little dog. It's actually very used to make me mad. Used to make me mad when he would say that about my little dog. But believe it, see.
Yeah, I know. That was karma. Water went down the wrong pipe.
But basically, and I learned this from Donna Cato herself. It was in one of her newsletters. But I put a pretty thick layer. I'm going to show you how thick I put it on. A pretty thick layer of Cato clay, Cato liquid clear. It's thick enough that it kind of, it makes it difficult to see whatever design you have on your piece. And then I put it in the oven, and this isn't a mistake, at 330 degrees Fahrenheit.
I'll use that from now on, Frank, and I won't get into trouble. Frank says his dad used to say they're cats and dogs' clothing. I like that one. I'm going to steal that, Frank.
Mishi, the thing is you're full of old shoes anyways, because I've never seen you not like a dog, big, little, small. Remember the Dunbars had that little dog that loved you.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I love all animals. I mean, and that's not just me trying to kiss ass. Cats come up to me. I mean, small children and animals, for some reason, are really attracted to me. And strange women in parking lots. By the way, I had another one come up to the car the other day at Aldi's. I had to tell her, no, I don't have anything for you, sweetie.
Okay, so this is how thick I put the liquid clay on, right? And then I put it in the oven at 330 degrees. That's not a mistake. I'm not accidentally saying the wrong thing. That is how hot the oven is, and I keep it. Go ahead.
Jessica's asking, where do you get your liquid Cato clay?
There's a link there to Donna Cato's Prairie Craft Shop niche. You can get it on Amazon, and you can get a big 8-ounce. What is this? 8 ounces or 12 ounces?
That's bigger than 8, sweetie. I think.
Well, you can get a big bottle, and you can get it on Amazon too. But it's actually less expensive on Prairie Craft on Donna's site. All right, so it's tented, 330 degrees for somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes. Now, this is not the type of thing where you're going to put it in the oven and walk away, or open a book, or take your dog for a walk. You got to keep an eye on it. If it is not as clear and as shiny as you want it, after and you're getting kind of afraid and thinking, oh, it's gonna scorch, then you can wand over it with just a heat embossing tool. You don't need one of those big industrial guns or anything like that. And it comes out this clear. I'm not making it up. And you can actually, what I very often will do is, instead of using any kind of a heat gun, because I always stop paying attention and I always scorch it. But you can actually, buff it if you have a buffing wheel. You can buff it with that too. And then the final step, after this is all done, I let them completely cool down. I let them totally cool down. And then I put them back in the oven at about 220 degrees, just to get them warmed up, but not so warmed up that I'll leave fingerprints. And then I will hold them over. I have these heat-proof gloves, and I'll hold them over a bowl like this, just to put a little bit of a, until they cool, just to put a little bit of a curve in them. A little bit of a sexy curve. Just a
They're
tiny.
called boo-boo gloves, technically.
Technically, they're called poo-poo gloves. But you can find them, they're like they almost look like a knit, a knitted glove. Not almost look like, they do look like a knitted glove. Right? Now, of course, after my little turtles are all baked, I'm also going to back those and probably put like a veil or something like that on them. But usually what I'll do with those is I'll embed the bail. Have we got time?
You can, yeah, sweetie, it's okay to go over. I was just giving you the timekeeper. Sure, yeah, you're right, Cher. We've gotten some old stuff from time to time from Amazon. You never know the buyer sometimes, right? That's another good tip, is if you find a good buyer, stick with them.
Right. Well, and the way I look at it is, Donna Cato has given a whole lot to the polymer clay world. So I don't mind, going to her store instead of, I don't know who's selling it on Amazon, right? So again, I'm using the sponge to get a little bit of my liquid clay on there. Let me put this on some paper so I don't have the same.
Yeah, the summer will play havoc with inventory. We've gone through that a couple times. Getting a couple baked bars of clay from time to time.
Yeah, we're in Georgia. So something like this, when you back it, it can be tough to get it trimmed afterwards. Sometimes you have to use your craft knife. There we go.
That came out clean,
Just
sweetie.
get pretty clean, pretty clean. Again, I'm not going to texture this yet, but I'm going to go ahead and press from the center out and just get rid of any.
Is that air bubble removal?
That's air bubble removal.
See, I'm learning.
Now, let me see if I happen to have. This is a huge bale for this tiny little turtle, but we're gonna use it anyways. This is a big bale. Now, when I'm just placing the bale so that it's somewhere within the upper 2/3 of the piece, right? Because when people first start, they think bales are supposed to go in the middle. But if you do that, if you put, the opening of the bale in the middle, the pendant's going to flip when it's worn. Now, if you wanted to, you could have this pendant, you could have this showing. But I always like, I like that floating look. All right, so I'm going to press that in pretty hard so I can see,
See where
I want to be able to, yeah. And I'm going to pull it out. Pull it out just like that. And then you want to take your craft knife which I just had, or a needle tool or whatever.
So Frank's saying I always thought you couldn't teach an old dog new tricks, Mish. You're proving them all wrong. That's part of who I am. One of the things I got to be doing is learning 100% of the time. I will do some of the most esoteric little projects just so I learn something new.
Now I cut that piece of clay out, got rid of that. Gonna use my kitchen sponge here, and I'm gonna get some liquid clay on the back of the bale. Get the bale pressed in there. Then I'm just gonna take just a little piece of clay. You don't have to be very careful about this. Maybe cut that a little bit straighter. And I'm going to put that right over the bale. Then once again, I'm going to use my texture sponge here, and I'm always go, it's worth it to just go from the center out toward the edges, just
Now,
in case there's any little air bubbles.
Oh, so it's again an air bubble even when you're texture sponging. Is the texture, for texture purpose, is it good or bad to go from the center out?
I just, whenever I'm pressing or doing anything, I'll go from the center out because air bubbles lurk. You think you got them all. Again, I started talking before. I don't have them. Apparently, people are using pins that you use to display bugs, and they're using acupressure pins
And
to
insulin needles.
yeah to just yeah, we do have insulin needles, right? To
Yeah.
just poke holes so that they can the air has someplace to go. So because if the air doesn't have someplace to go, you get a very unattractive looking bubble
So
in your baked piece.
Donna Lee Little says hello to everybody.
Hello, Donna Lee Little. So now for this one, it's small and it's complicated. It's detailed, not complicated. So I'm going to use my craft knife to clean up the edges. And I'm, beveling it as much as I can. Because you don't want to have to clean this up after baking, right? And so see how there's a curve here? So I'm going to come from the middle of the curve down into that little corner. And from the middle of this curve down into that little corner. And I got clay boogers all over the plate. So this one's a little bit more complicated to do. And then we'll try to get around his head here. And around these cool shoulders. turtle shoulders. Sexy little turtle shoulders. And then the same thing over here. And then I would bake that. And let me just make sure it's. So I'd bake that guy face down, right? And then when he was all baked, I'd put him on some sort of small cutter. I won't do it now because I'll mess up the texture. But I'd put him on some sort of small cutter like this. And again, I would do either liquid clay or resin because you can't sand, that. You can't sand something that you've silkscreened.
Yeah, you just take the paint off, right?
Yeah. I'm just trying to get this little area here. And I think that's it. I think I've gone over everything.
Hey, you know what? You got a minute, sweetie. Actually, we're running at 1:45. I was lying there. My math was bad. But no, that was cool.
Just anything you can to clean it up before you bake it. Anything is a good idea. It's just a whole lot easier to do prior to baking than after baking. So one last thing that I'll do on the edge here is I am texturing the edge, but I'm sort of rolling back toward the center of the piece because I don't want to undo what I just did. I don't want to bring some of the edging over the top again.
Everybody loves this piece.
No, these are really cool cutters. This is the turtle #1 set. There's a couple of little turtle sets, and they're super cool, right?
So
If you wanted to make a bunch of these up, I'll tell you what, in different colors and stuff like that, these would sell like hotcakes. Now, when I put the liquid clay on them, even though you can only see a tiny bit of Mica Shift, in between the design, it is going to pop and it's going to look different than, if you just did it on plain clay, or even if you just did it on plain mica clay. It's got a little
extra. Can you show the
extra.
bale again, sweetie?
The entire thing, how to do an entire bale.
Somebody was just asking questions. Was there a bale? And they just missed that part. So yeah, there's the bale there.
And the bale is, you press what you do is you put some backing clay on there raw, and you press that bale, and I just used a metal spoon bale. You press the bale into that raw clay, cut out, take the bale off again, dig out the clay that's inside that impression, put a little liquid clay on the bale, put it back in there, cover it with a strip of clay, and then just texture the bejesus out of it until you can't see the seam where you put that little piece of, little strip of clay to cover it. And that's in there good. That's a nice, secure.
So the person asking about the bales got it, sweetie.
Okay.
So did you have a bead handy, beautiful?
I don't. I don't. I'm sorry. I did show some earrings that we're planning on putting in the store, and I am finishing up some beads for a really pretty necklace that we're probably gonna auction off. That we might auction
Yeah,
off.
that's actually a really cool necklace. That's one of my favorite of your pieces.
This is another piece that we may auction off. This is my
See,
original.
she says she doesn't have anything, and see how they just come out of the woodwork. Okay, keep going, sweetie. I'm sorry.
So this is my original design, um, and this is one that I've gotten like awards for and stuff like that. And it is a brooch, and again, it's an embedded brooch. And this is another one that we're thinking of auctioning off. So we're thinking of adding that to our lives. Little auctions.
Well, anything, I mean, what the goal, guys, is, you know, that I get to retire. But I want to be a kept
Not
member.
me. Yeah. So, does anybody have any more questions, or you can always I'm pretty good about answering it, even if you message me on the Complete and Utter Mess Facebook page. I'm pretty good.
So Frank says, "Well, wow, that last piece was gorgeous."
Oh my, I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of it. I actually I used to have a blog, and on the blog I talked about how this piece taught me how to self-critique. The first couple of versions of this were horrible. And how I had been taking a class in elements of design and principles of design, and I really sat down instead of hiding it in a drawer and saying, "Oh, I hate it. I never want to see it again." I really made myself sit down and say, "Well, what is it that you uh, when you do critique or any critique, what they suggest you do is something called the love sandwich. So what you do is you pick one thing that you like, one thing that you don't like, and then another thing that you liked. So little by little, I went through each component until I pretty much could say I liked it all. So, okay, guys.
So Sherman asked, "What kind of clay did you use on that piece?"
On 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 the pin, on the
Yeah.
vases. So back here is it's a mixture of like this jade color and gold, and it's a Skinner blend, and gold and a little bit of bronze primo. The vases, I have a tutorial called Go with the Flow, fluid art technique with polymer clay paint. And I made the vases from scraps of another project I had made with that technique. And then originally, what I was doing was I was putting gold in these cracks because I was trying to do, is it kintsugi? It's a Japanese thing where they repair with gold. But the gold kept, I didn't have any like real gold flakes. And so it kept going black. So I just put some, I had carved these lines in here, and then I put some liquid clay in there.
So you're also going
And
to
then
be put. Oh, I'm sorry, sweetie.
I carved, and then I carved here. I carved here. So, but this is something that everybody, if you texture, if you texture like a mica blend, you get some really interesting effects. It almost looks like wood. And
Have a good night's sleep, Eva.
good night, Eva. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for hanging out so long. I know it's late there.
And so, Cher, are you asking for what mica did she use on today's project?
Today's project is turquoise, and then a blend because I'm running out of clay. Peacock. That's peacock blue, and then the green color is, just sort of a mixture of. It's probably, uh, it's probably one. Well, it's a blend. I just took some scraps I had and blended it up, and this is what I got. This kind of mint color. I know it was probably 1/2 bright green pearl to 1/2 peacock, and then blended half again with pearl white.
And that's Primo clay, right, sweetie?
That's Primo, yeah. That's Primo. I like the oceany colors with these particular silk screens.
All right, guys. This is we always have so much fun on these, and I want to thank everybody for coming. Facebook tomorrow at 2 if you're available. We're in the process of thinking where to land these streams when everybody's back at work. So again, any help that you guys have. Little stats, we're up to 109, I believe, on YouTube. 1,009 on YouTube. And last week's Facebook streams, you guys got to pat yourself on the back. We netted 40 new subscriptions. We're sitting at 920 something. Forgive me for not having the exact ones. So that's awesome.
Followers, man.
Followers on Facebook.
So cool stuff. Thank you.
Cool stuff. And if you saw anything, take a look at our school. If there's a video you want to buy, I'm not going to say no.
Keep us in clay. Keep us in clay so we can
That's true.
Buy some stuff and keep us in clay, right? We do also have a donate button. So
and I've kicked the link in, but it's also on the YouTube. If you look at this little tiny baby little PayPal button, you can donate to us. I'm in the process of learning the infamous YouTube system, so I can make that a great big PayPal button.
Yeah. Keep us in clay. We'd appreciate it. All right, guys.
Guys, be safe. Have fun. Make a difference out there, okay? We will talk to you later, and please keep coming. We love it. And thank you.
Thank you. Good night.